Tonight we talk about the secret language of ancient Mesopotamian market merchants, those quick-witted deal-makers who once filled the bazaars beneath the ziggurats with noise, color, and codes. The air tastes of roasted barley and damp clay. You can almost hear the slap of sandals on the brick roads of Ur. You're surrounded by shouting traders, each swearing that their sesame oil is purer, their lapis truer, their dates sweeter. But listen closely, some of those shouts don't quite match what's being sold. There's rhythm hiding in the repetition, meanings tucked between the syllables. You've stepped into a world where prices are sung, fingers twitch in secret patterns, and a single misplaced word could cost you a month's profit. You probably won't survive this market without being overcharged at least twice. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're tuning in from and what time it is where you are. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You edge deeper into the bazaar. Heat shimmers off bronze scales. A man behind a heap of grain winks not at you, but at another merchant, then tugs his beard twice. It's no random habit. In this trade labyrinth, gestures are safer than words. A public proclamation of price might invite temple tax collectors, or worse, the governor's scribes, who love noting profits for record keeping, which usually means requisition. So merchants invent subtler methods, nods, tone changes, even the spacing between clay jars. Mainstream historians agree that ancient Mesopotamia birthed some of the first written contracts. But those written deals, etched into tablets with styluses, were only the tip of the business iceberg. Underneath official transactions pulsed an unspoken system, part necessity, part mischief. Fringe theorists even claim that the earliest cuneiform wasn't meant for language at all, but for disguising value codes, wedge shapes that represented commodities privately understood only by the scribes who made them. Historians still argue whether this secretive tradition began as tax evasion or as a clever merchant guild's inside joke. You pass stalls lined with copper trinkets, goat cheese, and baskets of figs so ripe they threaten to collapse under their own sweetness. Every stall has its own chant: fine oil, 10 measures for silver, pure lapis from Afghanistan. But if you listen longer, the pattern shifts. Certain syllables are drawn out, others cut short. It's like the traders are composing a melody whose rhythm tells insiders the real price. To the uninitiated, it's market noise. To those in the know, it's a ledger sung out loud. A young apprentice brushes past you, balancing a tray of fish. His master coughs twice, loudly, then, in a lazy drawl, says, 2 shekels for the large ones. You notice the apprentice replaces "to fish" with 3 smaller ones. A simple code, learned through years of observation, coughs and pauses as shorthand for quantity adjustments. Somewhere, modern stock traders might applaud. You inhale the scents: damp clay, cumin, the faint metallic tang of copper dust. Every sense is part of the code here. Merchants mark time by smell. 2 sun-baked oils and afternoon heat mean discounts. Morning dew and the first cries of temple birds mean premium prices. It's all sensory mathematics, older than algebra. In the distance, a ziggurat looms like a giant brick mountain, its terraces shimmering with offerings. Beneath it, the market swirls, a living organism built on mutual suspicion and shared secrecy. When a passing merchant greets another with "May your clay stay wet," you realize it's not a blessing. It's a warning about dry, cracked tokens, spoiled bookkeeping. And somewhere between the laughter, the bribes, and the dust, you begin to understand. The marketplace isn't just a place of trade, it's a living language, a pulse of human ingenuity beating beneath ancient sun. You tuck your coin pouch closer, because here, silence might just be the loudest currency of all. Clay dust clings to your sandals as you duck beneath a reed awning, where the air is cooler and the light dimmer. This is where the merchants keep their secrets, beneath the counters, inside small baskets of baked clay tokens. Each one is about the size of a coin, but shaped like teardrops, cones, and little spheres. At first, they look like children's toys, but these humble lumps carry the weight of an empire's economy. You're looking at the earliest form of accounting, older than writing, older than math as we know it. Each token stands for a quantity of something: a jar of oil, a goat, a handful of barley. When business boomed, traders would slip them into clay envelopes called bulli, sealing their deals in literal clay shells. Mainstream historians confirm this system predates cuneiform tablets by centuries. Imagine it. Traders across summer balancing not ledgers, but bags of coated pebbles. Only insiders knew which shape meant what. A cone might mean a measure of grain in one city and a measure of beer in another. That's not just business, it's encryption by mud. You crouch beside an older merchant who's arranging his own collection. He glances up with a knowing smirk, as if reading your curiosity. Don't trust the stylus, he mutters in Akkadian. Trust the token. You nod like you understand. You don't. But you soon realize he's referring to something more than record-keeping. It's trust encoded in clay. Writing, after all, can be forged. Tokens can't lie as easily. They have texture, pattern, and rhythm. Fringe historians whisper another theory, that these tokens weren't only for counting goods. They were for counting people. A certain mark on a disc might denote a family's credit line or their social debt to a temple. Some researchers even link the shapes to ritual numbers, suggesting that commerce and worship were braided together long before temples became banks. Historians still argue whether these markets were sacred spaces first and marketplaces second, or the other way around. A donkey brays nearby, startling you out of your thoughts. The merchant laughs. He presses one of the tokens into your palm, a tiny sphere etched with faint cross-hatching. Barley, he says. But also, trust. The word rolls like sand between his teeth. The texture feels warm, like it's been held by hundreds of hands before yours. You glance around and notice something else. Small clay tablets stacked behind each stall, some with faint wedge impressions. These are the next step, the bridge between tokens and writing. To record multiple tokens, scribes began pressing their shapes into wet clay. Eventually, they replaced the physical objects entirely with marks. So, in a strange way, you're holding the ancestor of the spreadsheet. Somewhere in the 4th millennium BCE, accountants invented civilization and possibly your least favorite office software. As the sun climbs higher, the market grows louder. You catch snippets of merchant chatter, debates about purity, arguments about price, jokes about donkeys smarter than scribes. Each sentence carries undertones, half spoken, half implied. 2 jars for 3 cones, one man says, and his rival responds with a slow blink and a whistle, which somehow finalizes the deal. The air smells of baked bread and wet earth. Dust dances in the sunlight like golden mist. And beneath your fingertips, that little clay sphere begins to feel like more than an object, it's a key. You imagine merchants centuries ago passing these same coded pieces, their fingers brushing in the universal language of quiet agreement. No signatures, no surveillance, just trust sealed in fired mud. As you walk on, you hear the merchant call after you, voice gruff but amused. Remember the shape, he says. It will speak again before nightfall. You tuck the token into your pouch, not knowing yet that every pattern you'll see, the winks, the scents, the songs will trace back to this simple grammar of clay. By midday, the market hums like a beehive, heat shimmering, voices buzzing, the air thick with spice and impatience. You've learned enough to keep your purse close, but not enough to decode what you're seeing. The merchants move like actors in a silent play, trading not just goods but signals. You begin to notice a pattern, a subtle raise of an eyebrow when a priest walks by, a beard stroke when a sale is fake, a half sneeze that means meet me after sunset. Welcome to the Sumerian wink, the unspoken grammar of ancient commerce. These gestures began, historians say, as protection against eavesdropping scribes and tax enforcers. Officially, every transaction should have been recorded on clay tablets for temple review. Unofficially, that would have been economic suicide. So traders invented an invisible ink, the language of their own bodies. When a merchant scratches nose, it could mean discount, or watch for thieves, or I'm pretending to agree. Sometimes, 2 competitors shared a coded blink sequence. That could change a price mid-negotiation without a word. Imagine poker players with the stakes of empires. Mainstream history records that ancient Sumerians prized order, laws, ledgers, temple audits. Yet between those lines lived a second system, a hidden lexicon of gestures that no code of Hammurabi ever caught. Fringe theorists claim the gestures were tied to astrology, that a tilt of the head toward a certain constellation during trade invoked cosmic favor. Historians still argue whether this was superstition or smart psychological play after all. Buyers often yielded to a merchant who seemed cosmically aligned. You test the waters. At a stall draped in dyed wool, you mimic a passing trader's gesture to fingers brushing your chin. The merchant freezes, then bursts out laughing. "Careful," he says. "That one means you're offering to buy his donkey." You cough into your sleeve, pretending that's exactly what you meant. The crowd chuckles. One man pats your shoulder. Good humor is the market's currency. 2. You watch a group of spice vendors' necks. They use fans of palm leaves not just to stir the air, but to signal quantities. A full sweep means bulk sale. A half flick means one jar. One older woman adds an extra twist of her wrist, meaning, "I'll sweeten the deal." If you stop asking questions, you'd think body language would vary between cities. But the traders' movements form a near-universal code along the rivers Tigris and Euphrates. It's efficient, elegant, and if you're not in on it, completely infuriating. The smells are intoxicating. Cinnamon from Dilmun, frankincense from the south, and that ever-present tang of baked clay. Sweat trickles down your neck, and suddenly you understand why the merchants need signals. They'd lose their voices shouting over this chaos. You pause by a mirror-polished bronze plate and catch your reflection, dusty, sunburned, squinting. A boy selling dyed wool copies your stance and smiles. He mimics a trader's eyebrow flick, then whispers, "Means someone's lying." You follow his gaze to two men arguing over copper ingots. Sure enough, one has a nervous twitch, the other nods too quickly. The boy grins. Truth detection, Sumerian edition. Anthropologists today say these gestures likely influenced later trade habits. The Roman thumbs up. The medieval merchant's discreet handshake, a lineage of secrecy stretching from mud huts to stock exchanges. You realize you're not just in a market, you're inside the origin of human subtext. A sudden shout cuts through the noise. A patrol of temple scribes enters, clay tablets in hand. The market falls eerily silent. Traders resume straight faces, voices smooth, gestures still. Official dealings only. But beneath the calm surface, a new code flickers. Fingers twitch near the stalls. Eyes dart left and right. You can almost read it now. Stay quiet. Hide the tokens. Let the scribes think we're broke. The scribes pass without incident. Laughter slowly returns, like water after drought. A merchant claps your shoulder and murmurs, "See? Words build temples. Winks build empires." You can't help but laugh. Somewhere in that dusty chaos, you realize you're learning to see the invisible and ancient dialect that never touched clay, yet shaped the flow of civilization. The afternoon heat ripens everything: the figs, the tempers, the secrets. You move toward the shaded end of the bazaar, where the air smells richer, layered with sweet oils and something faintly metallic. Here the merchants deal not in barley or bronze, but in fragrance. Perfume, you learn, is more than luxury. It's communication. The perfume of power. A woman in a blue linen robe crushes myrrh resin in a stone bowl, adding a few drops of cedar oil. She doesn't speak, just motions for you to inhale. The scent is smoky, honeyed, and somehow commanding. In ancient Mesopotamia, smell wasn't just personal, it was political. A merchant's scent told others their region, rank, even mood. The elite reeked of imported myrrh and cinnamon. Common traders smelled of sesame oil and goat tallow. But hidden within those scents were subtler codes. Mainstream historians describe how Mesopotamian merchants developed one of the first branded economies. Perfume recipes were guarded like military secrets. If a buyer recognized a certain scent, they knew exactly who made the goods, and that meant trust. But fringe scholars go further. They argue that fragrance itself carried messages. If you wore cedar, it signaled you were honest. If you mixed it with fish oil, it meant negotiation open. The wrong aroma could end a deal before it began. Historians still argue whether these scent signals were intentional or just a byproduct of ritual. Hygiene, but every knows in this market seems to understand them instinctively. You follow the perfumer's motions. She adds a drop of date syrup, stirs slowly, then rubs a bit on her wrists before handing the bowl to another merchant. He inhales, nods, and presses 3 small shells into her hand. Payment accepted. No words exchanged, just olfactory syntax. Nearby, A young trader fans smoke from a burning mixture of juniper and tar. You ask why. He grins. To warn my partner to stalls away, he says. Different smoke, different price. You blink. So it's a code. He shrugs. A language. But better. It disappears in the wind. It dawns on you. This market communicates on frequencies your modern brain barely recognizes. Where you rely on text and emoji, they trade through fragrance and flame. You pass a stall selling oils labeled only with animal drawings: a lion for courage, a dove for purity, a snake for buyer beware. The seller dips a reed into a vial and offers it to your wrist. The scent is sharp, peppery, almost electric. Traveler's oil, he says, means safe passage. Or he adds with a grin, means you overpaid. You can't tell which everywhere. Scents mingle like whispered gossip. The temple across the plaza burns incense that smells faintly of honey, and ash a divine seal of approval, or perhaps surveillance. Priests were known to use special blends recognizable only to the faithful. A single whiff could separate loyal merchant from smuggler. A fringed tablet found in Mari even describes talking oils mixtures, said to reveal truth during bargains. Rub them on your wrists, and if the scent fades fast, the deal is cursed. If it lingers, the gods approve. Historians still debate whether this was chemical coincidence or a clever placebo to keep trade honest. Either way, the scent of cedar now feels like currency itself, floating, ephemeral, yet powerful enough to decide the fate of caravans. You wipe your brow. The sun slants low, golden light slicing between hanging jars of amber liquid. The perfumer smiles knowingly. Remember, she says softly, the air remembers more than tablets do. You walk away, half dizzy from aroma and heat. Behind you, smoke curls upward, blending into the sky. You wonder if even now, thousands of years later, some trace of those ancient codes still lingers in the wind, an invisible contract between buyer and seller, sealed not with ink, but with scent. As twilight rolls across the rooftops of the market transforms. The traders who once barked prices now lower their voices, their words slowing into a rhythmic drawl. Bronze clinks softly against stone. You follow the sound into a row of stalls glowing with firelight, where men in soot-streaked aprons weigh chunks of raw metal. Here, trade becomes performance. Stone, rhythm, and resonance matter as much as content. This is the world of the bronze tongue bargain. A smith with arms like carved tree trunks greets you. His beard gleams with flecks of copper dust. He leans close and murmurs, looking to buy, but the question rises in pitch on the last syllable, almost musical. You reply cautiously, and he chuckles. Don't worry, traveler, he says. You can't afford me yet. His words dance in cadence, a melody half business, half mockery. Mainstream historians note that early Mesopotamian trade often took place by recitation. Prices were sung literally to ensure memory and fairness in oral deals. The chant helped standardize rates before widespread literacy. But somewhere between melody and speech, merchants found a loophole. Certain notes, when held longer or dropped shorter, could alter meaning. A rising tone could imply add 1 shekel. A pause mid-phrase might mean ignore the tax. Fringe linguists even claim the tonal system acted as a kind of encryption, a prototonal language understood only by insiders. Historians still argue whether this practice was clever accounting or borderline sorcery. The smith beckons you closer. Listen carefully, he says, tapping his hammer lightly against an ingot. Each tap punctuates his words, a hidden rhythm guiding the bargain. Another merchant joins, responding with his own tapping to beats slower, then a hum. Around them, a small crowd forms. This isn't argument. It's duet. When both pause at the same note, the crowd cheers softly. A deal concluded. You realize you've just witnessed music as money. Nearby, a young apprentice records the exchange on a small clay tablet, not the words, but the beat pattern, a code of rhythm instead of text. The same pattern, repeated later, could prove the transaction's authenticity. You marvel, thousands of years before blockade, Mesopotamian traders used rhythm to verify trust. The smith hands you a small bronze pendant, roughly hammered but gleaming. Gift, he says, for listening, not for buying. You smile, but his tone slides downward, a warning. Guard your voice, he adds. Words weigh more than metal here. He's not wrong. In the gathering dusk, traders move from literal speech to rhythm and hum. The tax collectors, walking nearby, frown. They hear only chatter. But to the trained ear, meaning flows freely. Tone replaces number, melody replaces math. One trader hums a descending scale price drop. Another answers with a quick trill counteroffer. To an outsider, it's ambient noise. To a merchant, it's profit. You lean against a pillar, listening. Somewhere in the distance, temple bells echo faintly. The market absorbs their notes into its own rhythm, turning divine sound into commerce. You can almost sense the pattern, the invisible beat tying every trade together. Like a shared heartbeat, fringe theory whispers that this bronze tongue system survived for centuries, even shaping the pitch-based tonalities of later languages. Some scholars say remnants linger in marketplace calls across the Middle East. Today, a melodic fingerprint of Sumerian soundcraft. Historians still argue if that's coincidence or cultural memory. As night deepens, torches flicker and the metallic scents mingle with smoke. The smith raises his hammer one last time, letting it ring out a perfect, resonant note. The sound ripples through the air, one pure tone that feels like a blessing and a warning combined. You walk away under a sky thick with stars, their silent shimmer echoing that last vibration. For a moment, you wonder if even the heavens are listening, keeping time to the rhythm of 1,000 ancient bargains still pulsing beneath the dust. Night in the bazaar has its own flavor, cooler, smokier, and far more dangerous for your coin purse. The perfumed cellars are gone. Now the air belongs to bakers, brewers, and the occasional thief. You follow the glowing ovens and stumble into a lane where laughter spills like beer foam. The scent of yeast, honey, and baked grain makes your stomach growl. This is the realm of bread, beer, and betrayal, the coded hospitality of the Mesopotamian market. A round-faced baker waves you over. You look thirsty, he says, sliding a loaf the size of your forearm across the counter. He nods to a clay mug filled with frothy beer, its bubbles catching torchlight like tiny moons. You reach for it, but he stops you with a grin. Not yet, he says. You haven't answered the loaf. You blink. The loaf. He points to a crack in the crust, shaped like a crescent. You realize the bread itself is speaking. In ancient Mesopotamia, food wasn't just sustenance, it was negotiation. Mainstream historians record that merchants often sealed deals with bread and beer, because the temple priests believed shared grain meant shared fate. But here in the alleys, that custom turned subversive. The way bread was cut, the shape of its score lines, the direction of its crumbs all became coded symbols. A straight cut meant fair trade. A spiral crust meant keep quiet about the price. If a baker served a loaf with a sunburst pattern, it implied deceit ahead. You begin to see it everywhere, messages hidden in flour and heat. The baker finally hands you the mug. Now drink, he says. You sip cautiously. It's thick, sweet, almost like liquid bread. You're safe, he adds. If the foam rises fast, you're trusted. If it sinks, he pauses, watching the bubbles collapse. You laugh nervously. It's sinking, he shrugs. Then don't lend money tonight. Fringe historians claim that tavern brewers acted as informal bankers, lending barley or beer to traders who'd run short on silver. But those loans came with superstition. The behavior of the bubbles, the clink of mugs, even the order of toasts all carried meaning. Historians still argue whether these rituals were proto-accounting or pure theater. Either way, it kept commerce lubricated and paranoia alive. You watch a group of merchants gathered around a large jug, each dipping a reed straw to drink. Between sips, they exchange coded gestures, tilts of the jug for profit shared, rotations for tax evaded. The baker leans in and whispers, they're sealing a pact. Same recipe, same secret. You ask what happens if one breaks it. He laughs darkly. The bread tells the gods. In the corner, a drunk musician hums a tune about a merchant who betrayed his partner over stale barley. He salted the dough, the song goes, and the gods salted him. Everyone chuckles. But there's an edge to it, humor sharpened by fear. You realize betrayal here isn't just bad business, it's cosmic offense. The same gods who blessed the harvest also cursed dishonesty. And the market never forgot that balance. You take another sip. The foam now clings to the rim in perfect rings, apparently a good sign. Around you, the laughter grows louder, the deals looser. Bread is broken, mugs are refilled, and in every gesture, some hidden grammar hums beneath the surface. A baker cuts loaves into quarters for equal parts, meaning trust restored. A brewer hums a descending note, discount granted. Historians often say Mesopotamian beer was safer to drink than water. You'd argue it was also safer to speak through. A wrong word could ruin you. A shared drink could save you. As you leave, the baker presses a small, warm roll into your hand. For travel, he says, cut straight if you trust the next man you meet. Diagonal if you don't, you nod, slipping it into your pouch beside your barley token. 2 edible passwords in one day. The night wind carries laughter, spice, and the faint echo of brewing songs. Somewhere in the dark, a cork pops. Somewhere else, a promise breaks. And you, half full, half weary, walk the fine line between feast and fraud, guided only by crumbs and code. Morning creeps back into her, the first rays glinting off golden domes and the glazed blue bricks of the temple district. You've followed the scent of incense and the sound of chanting to a quieter quarter, the sacred heart of the city, where trade and worship blur into one. Here dwell the temple tally priests, men and women who look like accountants, but act like oracles. Their styluses flick across damp clay with holy precision. The courtyard is lined with stacks of cuneiform tablets, each marked with neat wedges and faint thumbprints. You pick one up, still soft from last night's writing. Columns of symbols march across its surface: goats, oil jars, fish, beer, silver. But the last column is odd. The wedges form patterns that don't match known words. A priest notices your curiosity and smiles. Those are for the gods, he says, not for you. Mainstream historians recognize this practice as temple accounting, priests tracking offerings, and trade on behalf of the divine. Yet beneath that pious surface ran a secondary code. Some marks didn't stand for goods at all, but for secret temple rates, conversions, and debts owed by powerful families. The gods, conveniently, could neither confirm nor deny the figures. Fringe scholars suggest that this blending of piety and profit was the birth of organized banking. Historians still argue whether the temple was a holy place first, or the world's first financial institution disguised as one. You watch as a young scribe kneels before the altar, reciting numbers aloud as if praying. The rhythm of her voice sounds devotional, but the content is pure mathematics inventory wrapped in incantation. A priest beside her whispers, every number pleases a god, but some gods charge interest. He chuckles at your startled expression. Divine bookkeeping, he adds, the oldest trick in the clay. On one tablet, you see your first true cipher, a set of wedges arranged in a pattern that repeats only after every third line. You ask its meaning. The priest's eyes glimmer. Exchange rate between barley and beer, he says softly, but written backward. He explains that only the high scribes, initiates of the temple's numerical cult, knew how to read it properly. Outsiders saw nonsense. Insiders saw wealth. Fringe theories abound that these priests weren't just record keepers, but information brokers. They could make or ruin merchants by divine miscalculation. Some clay archives even show deliberate rounding errors, later corrected by offerings, subtle reminders that faith and finance were intimately linked. Historians still debate whether these were accidents or strategic generosity. You glance toward the altar where jars of oil glimmer in the dawn light. Each jar bears a seal, a small cylinder rolled into the clay, leaving an impression of gods, beasts, or stars. The priest explains, the seal tells who owns the promise. Without it, the numbers mean nothing. It's the earliest form of authentication, centuries before signatures or passwords. You trace your finger over one design, a lion devouring a bull, the emblem of a temple syndicate known for fair trade and brutal debt collection. One scribe, seeing your fascination, offers to show you a trick. He places a small lump of clay before you and carves the same number sequence twice, once straight forward, once inverted. Now, he says, read it backward. The inverted one reads as a prayer. See, he says, smiling. Every account must please heaven and earth. The wind shifts, carrying incense and roasted grain from the city below. Bells chime from the ziggurats' upper tiers. The priests begin stacking tablets into a clay chest, sealing it shut with wet mud. For the gods, one murmurs, but you know better now. The gods might receive the smoke of offerings, but the priests keep the numbers. As you leave the temple, you feel the weight of their gaze. They guard the balance between trust and trickery, holiness and hoarding. You step back into sunlight, clutching the barley token still in your pouch. In the world of the tally priests, even the gods must learn accounting or risk being outbid. By midday, the city fades behind you. The market's shouts dissolve into wind as you follow a caravan out through the gates of Ur. Dust lifts from hundreds of hooves, donkeys braying under packs of lapis, copper, and grain. You've left the bazaar, but the language of trade travels with you, coded not in clay or scent this time, but in motion and mark. Welcome to the caravan cipher. Your guide, a leathery man named Enlil, waves you closer. He wears a headscarf patterned with faint blue triangles. Remember the marks, he says, pointing to a line of donkeys ahead. On their flanks are small streaks of ochre paint, different colors, shapes, and smudges. You think it's decoration, until you realize they match the same symbols etched into the jars, tied to their saddles. Each mark tells who owns which goods, Enlil explains, and who owes favors. Mainstream historians describe these markings as early branding signs of merchant guilds, caravans, or temples. But deeper investigation reveals something more cunning. Some marks don't match any known family or city. They're relational codes indicating trust levels, secret alliances, and trade routes to avoid. Fringe theorists even claim the caravan cipher functioned like a mobile messaging system. Historians still argue whether it was intentional or instinctive. But one thing's certain, these traders wrote on the move. As the caravan stretches across the plain, you notice rhythmic patterns in their movement. The lead rider raises his hand twice, pauses, then points at the sun. Immediately, half the group veers left toward a cluster of date palms. Signal, Enlil mutters. Means reroute tax patrol ahead. The message passes silently from one rider to another through mirrored gestures, like the Sumerian wink reborn on horseback. Later, at a rest stop near a dry riverbed, merchants unroll maps made not of parchment but stitched leather. Across them are painted dots, lines, and animal shapes. Enlil shows you one shaped like a coiled snake. Danger, he says. Or sometimes opportunity. You raise an eyebrow. Depends on who's reading. He grins. Exactly. That's how we stay rich. Fringe historians love this stuff. Some suggest these caravans invented what we'd now call logistics encryption, a method to share routes without outsiders decoding them. A spiral might mean wait for rain. A broken line might mean bandits. Historians still argue if it was an organized system or a shared instinct passed through generations. Either way, it worked. Mesopotamian goods reached from the Persian Gulf to Anatolia. And not all those routes were recorded on temple tablets. At night, the desert hums. Fires crackle. Stars spill across the sky like scattered barley grains. You sit with the traders as they paint new marks onto amphorae. The pigments are mixed from crushed minerals, red for lapis traders, black for copper, white for textiles. Tomorrow, Enlil says, we meet a rival caravan. We'll swap to jars but mark them as 10. You frown. To cheat them. He shakes his head. To confuse the scribes who'll ask later. A young boy, maybe 10, hums as he paints a zigzag on a jar. Means safe hands, he says proudly. You realize that even the children speak this language fluently. In a world of long distances and unreliable law, code is survival. When dawn comes, the caravan moves again, silent except for creaking ropes and low animal grunts. You start to recognize patterns. The position of bundles on a donkey's left or right side means trust this trader or approach cautiously. The spacing between riders shifts, depending on which temple's jurisdiction you're crossing. It's communication through formation, a choreography of commerce. Enlil hands you a piece of chalk. Mark your own jar, he says. You draw a small spiral, unsure of its meaning. He studies it and smiles. Traveler's luck, he says. Ancient code for someone who survives markets without debt. You smile, though you know luck is rarely free. Behind you, the city's towers fade into the haze. Ahead, endless dunes shimmer, marked with invisible lines of trade roads drawn not on maps, but in memory and trust. Somewhere in that vast silence, You begin to hear the rhythm of ancient logistics, the heartbeat of a world held together by secrets, painted on the sides of donkeys. By the time you return to the city, the market feels different, quieter, maybe, or simply more suspicious. You know too much now. You've seen the caravan cipher, heard the coded speech of traders, and read the gestures that slip through a crowd like minnows through reeds. But nothing prepares you for the day someone breaks the trust that keeps this web alive. It begins with a seal, a small, carved cylinder of limestone, about the length of your thumb, etched with tiny scenes: wheat, a kneeling god, a merchant handing over a jar. Every trader has one. When rolled across a wet clay tag or tablet, it leaves a signature image, binding the deal like a divine handshake. And for centuries, these seals meant honesty, heritage, and reputation, until one doesn't. You're at a spice stall when the first rumor spreads. A man from Lagash sold cedar oil barrels stamped with the seal of Enhedu's Guild, a prestigious mark, known across the region. But when the barrels arrive at port, they contain rancid fish oil. The city erupts. Enhedu herself, a merchant matron, with bracelets heavy as debt, storms through the square, shouting, "Someone forged my seal." Mainstream historians note that seal forgery was rare but devastating. In Mesopotamia, reputation was currency. One fake could bankrupt a house. Fringe theories whisper of an underground workshop in Europe, where rogue craftsmen carved imitation seals by moonlight. Historians still argue whether this was criminal enterprise or political sabotage, perhaps orchestrated by jealous priests who disliked wealthy merchants. Trespassing into temple affairs, you trail the chaos through narrow alleys as officials drag out jars, inspecting the clay tags. A scribe squints at one impression under lamplight. "The god's eye," he mutters. "It's missing a lash. The detail is minuscule, but it's enough." The forgery is confirmed. Enhedu collapses onto a stool, her fortune ruined by a single missing eyelash in clay. The market tightens its breath. Traders whisper in coded phrases you only half understand. Some refuse to trade altogether. Others invent new marks, etching symbols beneath their seals, tiny lines, meant to prove authenticity. A second signature, one man tells you, visible only to those who know where to look. You realize the merchant code is evolving in real time, reshaping itself in response to betrayal. Later, as the sun sets red behind the ziggurat, you follow Enhedu to the temple. She kneels before a priest accountant, offering silver in exchange for justice. The priest frowns. "Clay remembers," he says. "We'll find who carved the lie." You imagine rows of tablets in the archive's trade records, seal impressions, contracts, all cross-referenced by apprentices whose eyes ache from the glow of oil lamps. It's an ancient form of forensic science. That night, the forger is caught, a craftsman found with 3 counterfeit seals and a pouch of stolen silver. The crowd demands his exile, yet part of you feels uneasy. The man looks more frightened than cunning. As he's dragged away, you hear him cry, "I was ordered to carve them." But no one listens. The next morning, a strange calm settles over the bazaar. Merchants test their seals like nervous gamblers checking dice. Some begin using secret scratches inside the hollow of the cylinder, tiny, invisible identifiers known only to them. Others develop verbal confirmations, speaking short phrases to trusted scribes as they stamp, ensuring the mark matches the mouth. Mainstream archaeologists see this as the birth of authentication systems, proto-signatures, that would evolve into modern trademarks and legal seals. But among merchants, it becomes something more spiritual, a ritual of trust. Each impression is both prayer and gamble. Enhedu reopens her stall weeks later. You notice her new seal, a lion and a caged bird. "Means strength guarded," she explains softly. "No more false eyes." As you watch her press it into wet clay, you realize the market's secret language isn't just about trade, it's about belief. Belief that a mark, a word, a gesture can still mean something in a world where even gods have accountants. The air is softer now, thick with dusk and cooking smoke. You wander once more through the market that taught you its secrets. After the chaos of the counterfeit seal, life has resumed its rhythm. Donkeys bray, coins clink, and the aroma of roasting onions and sesame oil drifts between stalls. But something in the way people speak, move, and trade has shifted. It's subtler, more coded like a language tightening its grip before fading away. Near the old spice vendor, a scribe recites prices for barley and tin in 3 dialects, shifting tone depending on who's listening. He pauses to wink at a buyer from the west, signaling a discount only they understand. You catch it now, the shared grammar beneath the noise. The marketplace is still fluent in secrecy. Historians still argue whether this coded culture was born from fear, greed, or genius. Some say the merchants of Mesopotamia merely adapted to survive the world's first bureaucracy, a jungle of ledgers and taxes. Others suggest something deeper, that secrecy itself became a kind of poetry, a social glue binding strangers through invisible words. You step into the shadow of a ziggurat. Its baked brick walls glow gold under the setting sun. From here, you can see how language itself has changed. Clay tablets carved with cuneiform lines that once recorded grain sales now look like fossils of speech. Scholars will later call this the dawn of writing, but for you, it's the last whisper of a merchant's code that began in the open air. Not on temple walls, a young apprentice bumps into you, carrying a tablet still soft with wet clay. You glance down and see something odd, a pattern of dots between the words. Decoration, you ask. The boy shakes his head. Trade notes, he says. For the reader who knows where to look, the code lives on. Smuggled right into the invention of writing itself. Mainstream historians would label it shorthand or clerical abbreviation. Fringe thinkers, though, see it as rebellion proof that traders refused to surrender their independence to temple oversight. Even when writing was born, one theory says, its first sentences were lies of omission. You can almost hear the laughter of the old market men, ghostly and smug, echoing through time. By the following century, their language begins to splinter. Babylon rises, Akkadian replaces Sumerian, and the traders' old winks and marks fade into half-remembered habits. One merchant adjusts his headcloth a certain way and doesn't even know why. It's just tradition. Their secret language, once alive with risk and rhythm, becomes invisible, woven into new tongues, surviving in the shape of numbers and idioms that will one day reach even your own life. You pass a bronze smith arguing with a buyer. The smith says, "You know the price," but his hand flicks toward his belt, a gesture that once meant double for strangers. The buyer misses it entirely. The code has dissolved. Babel has broken the cipher. Yet, somehow, the silence feels sacred. These merchants, with their chalk marks, their winks, their cents and tallies, built something enduring, the world's first trust system. Long before credit cards, passwords, or blockchain, there was a nod across a stall, a shared signal under the noise. You realize that every handshake, every deal, every whispered discount at your modern checkout counter still carries their DNA. You look back at the market one last time. The crowd glows in lantern light, faces half-shadowed, voices blending into a single hum, a symphony of exchange. Somewhere, a child draws a spiral on a clay shard, smiling as if he's part of a secret. He is, and so are you. Now the wind rises again, rustling the palm fronds. The scents of sesame, wool, and wet clay mix into something dreamlike. It's time to drift. You breathe slower now. The marketplace quiets, fading into the distance. The lamps flicker out one by one, their smoke curling upward like thin threads of forgotten words. You can almost see them, those traders, who once filled these streets, packing their wares beneath the moon, whispering codes into the dust. Imagine the hush after closing time, the last cart rolling away, the faint creak of wood wheels on dry earth. The same air that once carried laughter and bargaining now settles into stillness. Even the clay tablets seem to sigh, cooling in the night breeze. You realize how much of human history is like this, a marketplace of meanings, half traded, half lost. Your thoughts grow slower. The city's heartbeat becomes your own, steady, ancient, patient. You picture a single seal impression drying on a tablet, its message fading, but not gone, waiting for someone centuries later to trace its curves and guess at its secret. Maybe that's you. Maybe that's the whole reason stories survive. To remind us that even vanished languages still echo somewhere, if you listen softly enough. The fan hums. The air feels warm but kind. You've walked the streets of Ur, met the merchants of the dawn, and learned to hear what the world hides in plain sight. So now, close your eyes. Let the night fold over you like silk spun from time itself. The codes of the ancients are safe again, whispering just beyond sleep,